Hunter x Hunter is one of my favorite stories ever told. And I am not the only one to hold this opinion. I am sure a lot of people, even people watching this video specifically, consider Hunter x Hunter as one of the greatest stories to them. Hunter x Hunter is amazing, and I am sure through YouTube you have hundreds of videos talking about why Hunter x Hunter is so great and why it is one of the greatest stories of all time. This video is different because it talks about the same things, but key point that it is to me why I think that Hunter x Hunter is amazing. I discovered Hunter x Hunter about 5 years ago, I'd say. Hunter x Hunter was one of the first animes I watched, not the first 5, but somewhere in the first 10 to 15. Anime wise, Hunter x Hunter was great to me. I watched both adaptations, the 99 adaptation and the 2011 one, and I must say they both are worth the watch, not just one of them. My first perception of watching Hunter x Hunter was that this is a good series in overall, but to be frank, at the time I did not understand most of the stuff that today I appreciate as my favorite stuff about the series. The climax moment, the intense build-ups of the arc, the incredible philosophy behind it, the amazing character writing, all of this stuff weren't very amazing to me at the time. Not because necessarily I didn't appreciate them, but it was more I didn't notice them the way I do today, and surely if I'm not able to notice them, I won't be able to appreciate them. But I rewatched Hunter x Hunter more than one time. In fact, it's a solid 4 times about the 2011 anime, and every second of it is amazing. I must say that it's very hard for me to put my thoughts into words about Hunter x Hunter. Not because of any reason in specific, but the main point and the reason being that Hunter x Hunter is a story that holds very dear to me, closely, emotionally, and in every way possible you can imagine. So to put my thoughts into this, despite of the length of this video, it is still pretty hard. So if I miss something, I apologize, but I will try my best. So grab your snacks and enjoy Hunter x Hunter, or an analysis of Hunter x Hunter with me. Here we go. When we talk about the early episodes of Hunter x Hunter, by far the most impressive thing that Togashi has done in the early chapters of his work is character introduction. The first time we see Gon has a replica of what Gon is perfectly. You can understand his character in a simple matter, and in fact is the way that the character should be seen. My favorite part about early Hunter x Hunter is that every single thing is a reference to what the characters will become, or in other words, what the character mean to the story and what the character will mean to us later on. Interestingly enough, this kind of views to the characters cannot be seen by the normal eye of the person, reason being that they don't know the story yet. Assuming that this is the first time they are watching Hunter x Hunter, then they will never see that. But what makes this amazing is the interesting aspect of it. Gon is portrayed as the son of this prodigy-ass character who is very huge in this world. My favorite thing about Gon is the idea that despite everything happening at the same time, he is fascinated of adventure, and most importantly fascinated of the idea of having to become someone like that he forgets that Jing after all might have been a bad father to him, but more focuses on the idea that being hunter is great. Thus comes the name Hunter x Hunter, hunting a hunter, or hunting a triple star hunter, so technically should be Hunter x Hunter XX. But never mind, I digest. Despite Gon being the son of a prodigy, this isn't any Naruto we're talking about. This isn't incredible powers to one person, no. The point I'm trying to make that despite Gon being special, he's not really special. What makes Gon special is Gon himself, not what he's born with or anything like that. And the story, the other characters around never once treat Gon as someone special. Despite countless of times through the story, we understand just how strong he is and just how immensely special he is compared to others. other time referred as 1 in 10 million, you should understand that Gon himself is not special. He's not treated as such, so we the audience feel relatable to Gon, despite him being this crazy powerful creature. To us he is just a little kid, because he acts like one, he emotionally feel like one, and despite what he does and how powerful he is and who he fights, to us he still is that little kid trying to find his dad. Yoshiro Togashi from the beginning of Hunter x Hunter always had the idea that Hunter x Hunter is not just the story of Gon. In fact, he wanted to have this thing called shared protagonism. Shared protagonism is the idea that one more character or two more characters or more than one character will share the idea of being the protagonist of the story. We'll talk on that later on. The second main character we get introduced is Leorio. In Leorio's introductions in the early parts of Hunter x Hunter, we have to understand that it's more to reflect on who he is and his personality, rather than who he will become. But Leorio's journey, to me, has never been on who he will become or who he is, but more what he serves. Because to me, Leorio is a person that importance to the other characters and to the story itself is huge, despite you not seeing that. Leorio is simply amazing and I appreciate him. For me, he always will be in my top 10 favorite Hunter x Hunter characters, and a lot of people don't see that, but Hunter x Hunter later on get twisted morally and more importantly twisted emotionally to the way we see this story and portray some of the characters. So when I see Leorio, I get reminded of the simple gold days of Hunter x Hunter, when everyone had the idea and the dream they wanted simply before everything got like, you know, twisted. But Leorio is to me this idea of purity in Hunter x Hunter, because by the end of the series I don't think Yoshiro Togashi was going with the idea of writing simple good and bad characters, but Leorio is the closest thing to being a good character to me by the end of the series. Also, I should mention that I don't mean good bad written characters, I mean good morally characters. Kurapika Kurta is arguably the most fascinating character out of everyone in the main character list. Point being that he's the only character that has a goal beyond being idealistic but more realistic. He has the most ambition, and at the end of the day I would argue that he has the most motivation to get to his goal out of every one of the main characters. He's the only one that never gets sidetracked because his goal is everything to him, and interestingly enough I would consider him in the most morally grey out of every one of the characters. I say that Kurapika is a character that acts beyond the reaction of the antagonist because he himself is the reactionary character in the first place. I say there are many takes after Hunter x Hunter in different shonen manga to portray a character like Kurapika, but there is no character like Kurapika to me, because Kurapika to me is more than just the guy who is trying to take vengeance, trying to split the blood that has been spilled already in his clan. To me, Kurapika is a character who is trying to, in the end of the day, feel happy about himself, but this is the only way he will. I would consider him at the end of the day a very broken character, because in a way and another, even in the final moments of the story, he's the only one unresolved. And the final character of the main character group is none other than Killua Zoldyck. I don't think there is even needed to talk about him, because despite him being the coolest, and I am understanding that everyone who watches this video, at least 99.9%, this is one of his their favorite characters, because Killua is just simply cool and amazing. He's the friend that everyone needs to have. Sometimes during the story, especially my latest rewatch, when me and my best friend were watching the story, sometimes we just forgot who Killua really is, because just seeing how great of a supportive friend and how great of a person he has become, we just forget where he comes from and what childhood he really had. That to me just proves that you should never judge a character by their past, because indeed Killua is just incredible. That is the first impression you need to have of these characters before going into the show. Now let's talk about the arcs individually. The Hunter exam is the first arc of Hunter x Hunter, so obviously the first few chapters of it are mainly around it with the introduction of the characters and the world. Like I mentioned before, the characters are introduced amazingly. They not only foreshadow the future of their individuality, but also we understand who they are and how they are perfectly. There is no misjudgment in the introduction of the characters. The Hunter exam for the first few chapters of it serves as the introduction to the world and not only the characters, like I mentioned before. We see the world mainly in 2 points. Point number 1 being the stories that are told about Jing, which we think about this powerful hunter that maybe, just maybe, Gon will become. And the second point we learn the story is through the mini detours they go before they enter the Hunter exam. Once they enter the Hunter exam, there are a lot of plot twists through the way. We understand that the Hunter exam is a more complex ideology of an organization bigger than just Gon's dream that serves as a bigger thing in overall. For example, when they thought they were just getting into the boat to the exam center, the boat itself was the exam, or the other things around it, which pretty much not only serve as to make the world wider, but also serve to point out the idea that this is something important. It is more complex than the idealistic nature of Gon by a lot. And I must say that going on just in an exam arc, when we have to remember that the point of this arc is introducing the world and the characters and the theme and progressing the story to the point that we care about these characters, this arc does a very good job. It is very thought-provoking at times and it is pretty good. We also get introduced to, I'd say, one character in this arc, which is very important. Hisoka is a very meaningful character indeed. His character arc is pretty dramatic. Not in the idea that he is dramatic in itself, but more in the idea that to me Hisoka has always presented the ultimate uncorruptible character, which he only cares about one thing, and that is his ultimate desire to fight. There are little things that we understand about this character that really change the idea of who he is, like the little interaction he has with the closest thing to him as friends, or the little things that he likes despite just fighting, if you know what I mean. But Hisoka throughout the entirety of Hunter x Hunter wants just one thing, and that is to fight. I really respect Hisoka's character because he is willing to sacrifice everything, including himself, including every selfish desire he could possibly have as a big villain, of a big super villain. Togashi to me breaks the mold by making Hisoka like that. And also we should understand that Hisoka to the story to me always presented that no matter what is going on here, no matter what are the strings pointing out at these great powerful battles that are going through Hunter x Hunter, there will always be this creepy looking clown looking around. That is Hisoka for me. For most of the arc, Hisoka in Hunter exams represent as the idea of the main villain. He's a psychopathic killer which ultimately serves between the character's easy way journey and characters learning that easy way journey and progressing to the win. Because believe it or not, getting to finish the Hunter exams and becoming a hunter serves to the character to becoming stronger meanwhile as well. And Hisoka to that is the detour. My favorite part about the Hunter exam is that every single exam they have inside the actual Hunter exams is a proof of its own that this world doesn't work as any other fantasy world that we have experienced in other pieces of fiction. The Hunter world is extremely realistic in a way that not everything is built just for the main character. Not everything is built just for the story. The Hunter exam has this feel to it that this thing is actually existing there and has been there for many generations, and many people have passed the Hunter exams before, and it always has been like this. Like for example, the cooking exam that we have and everybody fails just show the absolute selfish nature of the person who gave the exam, and to me just adds another layer of realism to the world. But to transit from that, I'm sure everyone knows what happens. From the sky there comes something from the Hunter Association, and one single man jumps from that, and we get introduced to also one of the most important characters in the series. Netero is the leader of the Hunter Association. Isaac Netero is always portrayed as this old person, but from the early chapters or the early episodes we understand that he is a stereotypical old person in anime, aka extremely badass and extremely wise and extremely smart and extremely strong. But what differentiates Netero from the older mentor old guys in anime is that he has no direct interest in the protagonist at the time. He's not there to teach them anything. In fact, he's there just to have a simple time. After the simple progression we get of what the show really makes sure to tell you is that Netero is very respected. In fact, he might be the most respected person of all of them, because from the moment he comes there, he makes some big changes into the hunter exams themselves, and despite that everyone has eliminated from the cooking show, Netero himself makes sure to just turn everything around, and that is respectful in his part. But point stands that Netero is very important, and later on we actually see that Netero has no real interest in any of the protagonists. He's there to simply have fun. He plays a ball game with them, and it is so simple that adds very extra layers of fascination to his character. But what makes this ball game interesting, to me at least, shows to me that it has been Togashi's destiny to write Hunter x Hunter, because the foreshadowing levels on that ball game on its own is other levels. Like, I never seen that. Just how complex of the nature the foreshadowing is there is just incredible. But yes, Netero is an extremely badass strong character, but the point is that there is a lot more to him. He's not your typical master in anime. In fact, he's no master. He is a selfish, extremely human character, which is important later on. After that, we progress to the island part of the hunter exams, which all of them are given a tag and all of them have to return their tag and the missions tag to get all the points and to proceed to the next day. It's very basic. The idea is to set these strong powerful characters into this part and to have them create conflict between each other, the direct conflict, because so far it has been more conflict between the exam and them than them between each other. This part of the exam serves two things, but the first actual big point that this arc serves about is to set up another arc. I know. And that is with a tag. After Hisoka gives him the tag, he says that you have to punch me, and Gon takes that very literally, as he should, because Hisoka actually meant it, and it becomes this big thing that serves on for later on. But the second part, what this part of the arc really serves, is to introduce a character, a very important character. Here we go! Me through the entirety of the series, to me at least, have presented this idea of a character who is loving of the things most close to him, but always has the disregard for anything that isn't that close to him or isn't as important to him as his mission. His mission being his family's work and close to him being his family. Illumi's tactics aren't really bad, and I wouldn't call him an extremely horrible character. Ultimately, he is much older than Killua, and to me, within the story, he represents a character that Killua would become if he never met Gon. That is how I see Illumi. And we know how the arc itself ends, and the idea is that despite meeting Gon and everything, the show isn't that naive to the point that would allow a murderous killer to just transform into a good guy just because the narrative needs him to. No, this has deeper than that, because after all, this show is extremely realistic in many parts. But the way it is presented, especially with the idea that Gon doesn't see that in the first hand, but he is knocked out and he only comes later on to understand what happens and then makes up his mind to go and save Killua and set up not only the second arc of the series, but also it is incredible because it drains naive conflict that Gon could have had that moment, and it is very good written in Togashi's part. I extremely like the ending of Hunter Exam. It is very thought out and it is very progressive for the time being, and it is a lot of exam arcs later on in shonen anime, I would say. The Zoldyck family arc is the shortest arc in Hunter x Hunter. It is only 6 episodes. The point of the arc is extremely simple: to get Killua back, because after the ending of the Hunter exam, Killua leaves with his brother and goes back to his family. This arc serves 3 purposes to the story itself. Number 1, to explain Killua's backstory and how he was treated by his family and how it came around that such an innocent guy to our eyes becomes a murderous killer after all, and just how different the Zoldyck family is from anything we have seen so far. Despite being ethic men, how much they value work and how much they value their mission. Second thing, it is meant to reevaluate the importance of Killua to Gon and how Killua to Gon after all is very representative of his first friend, and the same in reverse, and just how important they are to each other as friends. And the third thing is to simply show up that Hunter x Hunter's greatest power in writing is indeed exceeding expectations. Whatever you expect the story to follow, whatever line you create in your head, Hunter x Hunter most likely will break that line, and you most likely won't ever just predict how things will go out to. Because certainly for Gon himself, the Zoldyck family arc has the value of a training arc basically, because he trains a lot to open the doors, and to the point that he goes to meet the servant of the Zoldyck family, that is when we stop. He never meets anyone from the family itself because it's not important to him or to the story, because it is mainly to show just how intense this family indeed is and just how big their world is, because the mountain himself you can consider a world in its own. And second of it is that Killua himself just resolves everything by talking to a certain character which deserves its own entry. Silva Zoldyck is a great dad, and I actually mean that, because just by talking to him everything is resolved. And the one thing that is very important to Killua himself is what Dad says: I promise that I will let you go, but promise me one thing, that you will never betray your friends. That is so important to Killua himself, because Killua himself reevaluates what he is and who he is. And Silva is amazing. Like I said, it exceeds every expectation you have, and he knows that one day his son will get back, and ultimately he's right. So they leave and they're happy. But to get to that point, it was very, very important. Not only we learn about the Zoldyck family, who they are, but we learn that these are people that value their work, but most importantly value each other. We understand the revaluation of Killua's and Gon's relationship. Gon gets a bit stronger as well, and everything is together and ready for the next step. One other thing that I should mention is that this arc also serves a future foreshadowing, because we don't just understand the world building of this specific part of the world called the Zoldyck family just because it is mysterious and it is amazing, but because it has an importance later on, very later on. But for now, our characters must depart road, only to meet September 1st, Yorknew City. Our two main characters, after they depart roads, Leorio goes one way, Kurapika goes one way, and Gon and Killua are left together. And they realize they have a couple of months till September 1st to just play around. And what every logical man would start is to go to Heaven's Arena, of course. Heaven's Arena is the third arc of Hunter x Hunter. It is indeed a training arc. This arc thematically is important to reevaluate the fighting aspect of the series, but also it is important to the plot and the story for 5 things. Yes, 5 things. So every time we're going more and more. The first and the most important thing is to introduce Nan. Nan basically is the power system of Hunter x Hunter. I don't need to explain Nan because it takes so long and you have other sources for that, but the point stands that everybody who knows or sees this video has a basic idea what Nan is. What differentiates Nan for other power systems we have seen in anime is that usually power systems that are strict with their rules, aka that are very against ass pulls and such, that don't allow those things to happen into the story, usually are considered boring. But Nan actually differentiates from that, because Nan is one of the most creative power systems that gives sometimes individual powers to every person who uses, and as well it's used in a very beautiful manner, as well as doesn't allow ass pulls or anything like that. So it's a very strict power system, and as well is very, very complex in the idea of creativity and adds a lot of layers to the story. So a character can't be very broken without giving something for that, but at the same time every character has a power level and it's known what it is. It expands layers of potential and expands layer of talent and of course of hard work. Nan includes everything important to the characterization, creativity and the rules of the universe into one power system. In other words, even though it takes 3 episodes to explain, 5 episodes to learn and like 3-4 arcs to like completely master, Nan is amazing. Like the complete setup of Nan, it's more than worth it. That's all I'm gonna say. Best thing about Nan is the fact that it got explained earlier. We saw glimpses of Nan, like in the final battle of the Hunter exams, like we saw glimpses of Nan, what Illumi could do and what Hisoka could do earlier, and we saw glimpses of Nan throughout the entirety of this series. It's just that this is the arc we give it a name to, a face to, a characterization to, an actual ability to, called Nan. Second thing that is very important to the series and to Heaven's Arena is the art of fighting. Every single Hunter x Hunter arc has a huge important fight, or a lot of fight, because this is a shonen jump manga. But Hunter x Hunter is all about quality over quantity, so some arcs have more fights and some arcs don't, but the interesting concept is that this arc is all about fighting, so you would suppress to have a lot of fight. Coming from the guy who is there just to teach them to fight, and from another guy who is there just to be there to show the difference between normal people and Gon and Killua. So I would say yes, this arc is all about the art of fighting, and how Togashi pursues the art of fighting is very interesting. In a tournament arc, Togashi likes to show the improvements of the characters through personal drama, so he connects these mini characters to Killua and Gon despite not having a correlation before, just to make some weight to the fight, so they are not faceless characters and they give more personality to the fight itself. Then there is Hisoka in this arc. Hisoka in this arc serves as the pyramid of the point and as the third point as well. The third reason why this arc exists is to finish something that we started in an earlier arc, aka to give the tag back, because in this arc we resolve the whole tag thing as well as Hisoka gets the tag back even though Gon loses the fight, and we get the previous fight to that, which is amazing, and we see Hisoka in action and all, and then the fight against Gon and Hisoka is great, and we are gratefully to see the improvement in Gon, and Hisoka himself sees the improvement in Gon, but we understand that that is not enough. Even Gon realized that that is not enough, but enough to return the tag and to finish that story arc. And I consider the moment that Gon returns the tag to Hisoka to be the final moment that Hisoka is considered as the villain. He still is a morally super great character, like he still is a murderous psychopath clown, but he's not the villain of the story, in fact, or the antagonist anymore. From this moment, Hisoka gets the just there. He returns as the antagonist later on, but for the moment he just is there, which just there is my favorite part of Hisoka. And the fourth important thing about this arc, surprisingly enough, is Ainan. Yep, Ainan. What is Ainan? Ainan is when they put Nan in their eye. You know this thing? Yep, that is super important. Keep that in mind. That is actually super important. Like, that is one of the most important things in this arc, including Nan itself. And the fifth most important arc is that in the final moment of the arc, we get an introduction to Mashi, or Machi, whatever you want to call her. She is the first member of the Phantom Troop we get introduced in the show. Actual member, real member. The thematic of Heaven's Arena is improvements, art of fighting, and beyond all three of them is respect. Respect for a word you promise, talent of the other, but most importantly on both of them, respect for what you have. That is what Heaven's Arena is about. It is a great arc, a lot of people underestimate it, but it can easily be considered as one of the best arcs, and I'm okay if someone considers it as their favorite. Next up we have probably one of the more popular arcs, and that being Yorknew City arc, aka Phantom Troop arc. September 1st, Yorknew City. This arc is extremely complex and I am fully aware that I will never do it justice in this video. So if you feel that I have more to elaborate in this arc, you're right, and I will make a separate video about this arc, but still I want to include my thoughts on this video slower. This arc serves a lot of purpose to the narrative, but this is one of those arcs that I don't care about the narrative. All I care is about the arc itself. So I'm gonna talk about the arc itself. First of all, Kurapika. Kurapika has changed a lot from the last time we saw him. The Judgment Chain is one of the greatest piece of Nan in Hunter x Hunter, and the way that is restricted just to Kurapika shows the absolute disregard to anything but rules in Nan's system, and it is absolutely genius of creativity. The way that the whole setup of the arc is made is incredible, because it starts in a slower matter, but still we are extremely interested in it, because there are like 3 episodes about Kurapika, then we go another 3 episodes about Gon and Killua, then they are all in the same episode span, like we have a half episode about that, half episode about that, introduced to new characters, stuff like that. So my point is that Yorknew City from all the other arcs in Hunter x Hunter is easily the most binge watchable one, and that is for sure. You got a spare night or two in the winter, like late night. There are only 22 episodes, so you can legit finish the arc in like 2 nights of binge watching, because it is extremely binge watchable. What separates these arcs from the other arcs are 2 things. First of all, the emotional connection. This arc switches protagonism, but as well as keeps the original one, because we see dual protagonism, I would say for the first time on the series fully, and that being that the dual protagonism is shared between Gon and Killua and Kurapika on the side, and later on they meet together. This arc is differentiated between the other arc because of the thematic individuality of the arc. Like I said before, despite this arc meaning a lot to the series and to characters, this arc as its own is just incredible as itself. Like Kurapika's journey through this arc is incredible. You can see pain, rage, sadness, anything from a murderous intent of a cold-blooded psychopath in his eyes to a person who cares about his friends and the things he loves the most. Kurapika's characters and his broken side you can clearly see throughout this arc, but it isn't delivered in an edgy, over pretentious way like just in the first few episodes. It slowly built up. The build up is so long that we see this from episode 1. And what makes this arc amazing is, first of all, the connection between Kurapika and Hisoka, how in the Hunter exam they foreshadow the connection and how right now it matters to the plot and to the story. But to fully give this arc justice, we have to introduce and talk about my favorite group of characters in any piece of antagonist story ever. Here we go. Yorknew City's Phantom Troop are for me the greatest show in piece of fiction of human beings that society views as pieces of garbage that society constantly tries to dehumanize, but they themselves are most humane characters we see in screen. Slowly through the arc we understand that despite all the actions that they take, all the murders they pursue, to each other they are nothing more than family. Everything from the creative basis on making them so intimate with each other, as well as creating a level of fascination to the viewer's eyes with the character designs, the amazing powers, and the individuality, personality wise, character design wise, and power wise each of them has, is genius from Togashi's part. And the most genius aspect on them all is the connection that they have with each other. It is simply beautiful. Yorknew's new Phantom Troop is the best thing about the arc by far, and the connection they have with each other, the way that they react to one character's death and everything in between is just amazing. By far the best thing about the arc, and to me at least the best group of antagonists in any piece of fiction, period. Another thing that to me makes this arc very fascinating is the importance of the thematic of the leader of the Phantom Troop, which deserves its own spot. Here we go. Crollo Lucifer to the troop is nothing more than a member sometimes. You can clearly see that he doesn't take a superior moral ground, a superior power ground in any way possible, despite being considered as the leader of the Phantom Troop. What makes him a great character is that despite anything he does, every single decision he makes as the leader of the group, first of all has in mind the huge care he has for each individual of the group more than the overall mission. And that to me embraces the absolute thematic of the series as a whole. Crollo to me, I understand that to a lot of people Crollo represents this mysterious personality and something more than just a face to the Phantom Troop. But to me personally, Crollo represents a character who is very caring. He's like a father, but a father that doesn't take any oppress of being the leader of the family or anything, but a father that values his children more than he values his personal success, his personal growth or anything like that. In the troop, to me, Crollo not only considers every single character as a family, like literally brothers and sisters, but to understand that the entire troop is formed around Crollo as misleads of the people, it's amazing. It's just incredible. Crollo is a beautifully written character, and that is for sure. And I absolutely admire people that consider him their favorite character in the series, because genuinely there is a lot to Crollo. I will address a lot about him in my Yorknew City video. Right now I want to talk about the three most important things to Yorknew City as a whole. The first thing being Kurapika versus Uvogin. First of all, I will have to give a huge shout out to my boy Uvogin. He is an amazing character. I absolutely adore personality types and characters that are written like Uvogin is, especially considering that he is a Phantom Troop member and how he cares and relies to the journey of the other Phantom Troops member. Like, he is incredibly written. He might be one of my favorite characters from the Phantom Troop, top 5 for sure, because he's amazing. Uvogin vs Kurapika to me is the climax of Kurapika's arc as a vengeance wise. For sure, Kurapika is a very morally great character. You cannot call him a good guy, but his way of dealing with this stuff to me is very emotional, because like I said before, Kurapika to me has never represented a person that vengeance controls him. To me, Kurapika always represented as a character that vengeance is his only way in his mind that will bring him happiness. Because even if the entire Phantom Troop is dead, I'm not sure that he would be happy if it's not by his hands. That is how much vengeance means to him. It doesn't consume him personally because he still is an emotional man. He still feels something when he killed Uvogin. He doesn't feel joy from that death, and it is incredible. But to the last moment of Uvogin to understand the complete loyalty he had to Crollo and the rest of the troop is not only beautiful in his part, but considering the emotional side of Kurapika as well, connecting with that just makes that moment 10 out of 10. The second very important moment to Yorknew City is the fight between Crollo and the Zoldyck members. First of all, we get introduced to who Grandpa Zoldyck is. For the record, I know his name is Zeno, but I love calling him Grandpa Zoldyck for some reason. And Silva. First of all, this is the most outstanding fight, I would say, because it is the only fight that relies on being cool, and absolutely succeeded that, because seeing the powers that the Zoldyck members have compared to, for the first time we see Crollo's powers, and as well before that we see Crollo in a very emotional scene, including Neon, which is a very cool segment of Yorknew as it owned this whole like 3-4 episode. This happens, it was amazing, especially considering the plot twist at the end with Illumi. This fight was incredible and it definitely deserves this spot. But the third is the climax, aka the ending of the arc. This ending of the arc is included in 3 mantras. First of all is the side of the Phantom Troop that went outside their hideout, which is very interesting, seeing them just run through the city, meeting Gon and Killua, and later on the second part is of course Crollo getting kidnapped and just seeing Crollo and Kurapika sitting in the same car with him being tied down and him saying that I do not fear death, and him telling the truth it is incredible because at the end of the day, even Kurapika understand that these characters are not just emotionless bastards, but they have emotions at least for each other. And the third most important part of this arc is the actual ending of the arc, aka Paku's death. Paku to me is one of the most loyal Phantom Troop characters. Her death was just incredibly well done. It was amazing. I loved it. The ending of Phantom Troop, especially with Hisoka getting blue-balled on a fight, was just beautiful. I see a lot of thematic remembrances there, and the fact that Togashi just didn't make a final great fight for this biggest arc that he's done yet, but he just finishes with words and just a final great moment, emotional great moment, is just beautiful to me. I have a lot of more to say about this, but like I said, I'm saving for the Yorknew City video. We move! Greed Island to me was always an arc that I appreciate despite everything. First of all, between Heaven's Arena and Yorknew City arc, the first 2 episodes we see Gon and Killua go back to the village that Gon was raised on. They interact with his aunt, and we get some emotional moments, and we understand more about Jing, because despite everything, that is the goal of the series, finding Jing, hunting a hunter, Hunter X Hunter. So a lot of times we get distracted from that, but that is indeed the goal of the series. Why I'm trying to bring that up is because this arc is all about that. First of all, Greed Island was very hyped up because in a way, Gon and Killua's motivation to go into Yorknew was finding Greed Island, and the final episode of Yorknew City is them auditioning for Greed Island. Maybe not winning it, but exactly they got way in. Everything about that I'm sure it introduced in the show, but I want to talk about Greed Island individually and what it means to me. I never got connected to Greed Island like some people do. It is not my least favorite of the series, but definitely not my favorite arc in the series. This arc to me is thematically the poorest in the aspect that I admire, like that I value, but it is a very cool because it holds some moments that are precious, and like Jing said, the little detours are what matters. The intellectual writing that holds some characters maybe sometimes is not just as interesting or as cool as the dodgeball fight, because the dodgeball fight was by far the best moment on the entire series thus far. From episode 1 to episode 69, and ironically, dodgeball game is by far the best thing ever. The thematic of Greed Island is very simple to understand. It is improvement, friendship, and group work. You can see improvement through the entirety of the arc with introduction of Biscuit, which is meant to be a comedy character at first, but then develops to this very caring character that we get connected to. We get introduced to a lot of characters in Greed Island. I'm gonna be honest, I don't get really connected to a lot of characters in Greed Island. Like, I understand the importance of the Phantom Troop in Greed Island and the importance of Hisoka in Greed Island, especially Hisoka, because Hisoka in Greed Island might be my favorite Hisoka in the entire show, because what he does in Greed Island, like with the kid, don't take that out of context, but it represents to me a huge deal about teamwork and what Greed Island represents, so it's just incredible. The thematic of Greed Island is beautifully portrayed, and it is one of the only arc in Hunter x Hunter so far to be ended with a huge grand final fight, because Hunter x Hunter fights so far don't finish off like that. They usually finish off with some words, with some fights that are not won, but this ends with a fight when the main characters fight the main villain, Ganthru, which by the way a lot of people argue it's a great villain. I appreciate and understand him, but his thematic importance is not for me either, but I like him. Believe me, Greed Island is great. I prefer Greed Island over some arcs in Hunter x Hunter, but the reason why I'm holding back when I'm talking about it is because I don't value a lot of this stuff to me as a personally. My favorite character from Greed Island specifically, besides Gon and Killua of course, was Biscuit. Not to value the underrated, I would say underrated because everyone that likes that sees Greed Island absolutely considers him as a badass, but underrated in the aspect that not a lot of people talk about him, is Razor himself, and his connection to Jing especially is amazing. And Hisoka, because Hisoka in this arc, like I said, it's incredible. To imagine that only Togashi can have the first villain of the show, a scary psychopath, clown, murderer, killer, to be friends with Gon and Killua and to help them to finish off a stronger character. Only Togashi can point. How did we go from this to this? Ask Yoshihiro Togashi, he knows. If you know, you know. The final moments of the arc to me represented Gon as a character, and to me the idea of the final point of the arc is not just to have a climatic battle between the main character and the main antagonist of the arc and just to have some great show off of power and some great fight, but to me represent more. To me represent the absolute purity of Gon's character, in the sense that despite being going through this whole journey, who he really is always stayed with him. After all, he is a 13-year-old naive boy who is fighting in the behalf of his friends to find Jing, his father. First of all, I have to talk something before we move on. I love the fact that Jing in the beginning of the arc says that, yes Gon, you are not gonna meet me in this game, I'm not in this game, and he still goes in because to him this is his training. Also, people who say Jing is a bad father, he made an entire game for Gon. My father is great, but he never made an entire game for me, and Greed Island is the greatest isekai anime. Greed Island is just an arc of Hunter x Hunter, and it's still the greatest isekai anime. So just saying, man, just saying, Jing is amazing. The final battle of Greed Island to me always represented the naive perspective on Gon's character, and just to show that after all he's still a kid and he still has a naive perspective on the world. He self-harms and risks his own life to get to win a fight, and he doesn't really care about others around him or his surrounding because he still has the mindset of a kid. He's a very realistic written character, and this set up some of the later moments on the next arc, if you know what I'm saying, amazingly. So let's just move on. Chimera Ant Arc is one of the greatest pieces of fiction I have ever had the pleasure of reading or watching, and I am sure that nobody is surprised by me stating that. In fact, everybody is expecting me to say that, besides the 2-3 people in the back who never heard this opinion, which are very rare people, by the way. Everybody agrees with my opinion mostly, because the Chimera Ant Arc is absolutely amazing, and don't expect me to do justice to this incredible arc in this video, because this video will have to be like 5 hours long. But if I have to do a Yorknew City arc video in its own, then I will have to do a Chimera Ant one as well, so don't worry, those 2 videos are coming, just be subscribed. But what I will include in the Chimera Ant Arc section of this video here are what Chimera Ant Arc is to me. Specifically to me, and I will separate Chimera Ant Arc in 3 parts. The first part is everything from the first episode of the Chimera Ant Arc to the moment that the Meruem, aka the king, is born. This to me represents the most critiqued part of the Chimera Ant Arc because a lot of people don't have the attention span. If Yorknew City is the most binge-watchable side of the Hunter x Hunter, then Chimera Ant Arc, especially the first part of the Chimera Ant Arc, is the complete opposite. But believe me, if you enjoy this part of the Chimera Ant Arc, but even if you don't really enjoy it, if you sit through all this part, I promise you there is no piece of fiction you will ever read or watch that has a more rewarding factor than going through this in your entire life. I promise you that. But what this part of the arc represents to me was always the fact that humanity is getting overthrown. Now we have Chimera Ant Arcs, and there is a question: why does humanity deserve to be here? Because ultimately what Chimera Ants to me always represented is that all the ants that we have never thought about before murdering, yes, I'm using the word murder because that is essentially what they do to humans in reverse, is that justified? If we are justified, why aren't they justified? This is extremely twisted, especially knowing that Chimera Ants themselves get the intelligence and their NAM power from humans. But also there is a personal connection to the first section of the arc. But first of all, we have to introduce a character. Ironically, I put Kite in this section of videos because I could have included him like back in the Hunter exam, but I put him ironically because of the 2011 one. Kite is to Chimera Ant Arc the gatekeeper, which introduces us to this new section of the world we never knew about. But Kite is a personal connection to Gon because Gon was expecting his dad, but he got Kite. But you have to understand one thing: Kite to Gon is the closest thing to Jing. Kite to Gon is as much as a father as Jing, if you ask me at least. My personal opinion on Kite, I think he's pretty cool. His ability is amazing, but my point is that a lot of people don't value the later aspect of what happens in the Chimera Ant Arc because they don't understand the importance of Kite to Gon. Because once Kite is important to Gon, Kite is important to us. Then later, let's talk about the second aspect of the show. Yes, let's do it. The royal guards are the definition of royalty in Hunter x Hunter. I mean that. They are extremely powerful, and as well as they introduce the biggest theme of the Chimera Ant Arc. They present superiority, loyalty, and incredible charisma. And they are just badass powerful monsters after all. Pitou is respectful to the king fully, but as well as there is a saying, Pitou never served the king. Pitou always served Meruem. Which means that no matter what decision the king choose to do, Pitou would have said yes without a doubt. And that is true and doesn't make her a one-dimensional villain in any source of form, because to me, she's never even a villain essentially. She works in direct conflict with the protagonist, besides of an action she did out of reaction to what the protagonist did in the first place, because they was gonna go to the base, Pitou sends them, kill Kite, came back, everything came 180 degrees, and then later on everything she did was in the order of Meruem. Yuppie is one of the most interesting royal guards to me. Personally, I always think there is a huge disregard of him in the fandom because he's amazing. To me, he always represented a character which goal is to show improvement. In the beginning, he's a character that would say whatever it's happening around without even questioning it, because his capacity does not understand it. He's created from monsters, and differently from other of the two royal guards, he is the less human in the beginning, but his character is improvement. He has the same journey as Palm, Knuckle, and should have, because they all are characters that are based under the idea of improvement. So it is incredible to see that into the character base like this. And the final moments of Yuppie are just pure poetry. The last royal guard is Charlepoof, or Poof, sorry if I miss saying his name. He is incredible, my favorite royal guard by far, and one of my favorite characters in Hunter x Hunter. Yes, you heard that right. He serves as the main villain of the arc, believe it or not. He's all our antagonist, but he's the only one that is morally bad throughout the entirety of it. And he's fascinated with this idea he created in his head of the king, and despite how unrealistic it is to the actual situation, he does not see Meruem, he does not see anything in the king besides what he thinks the king is, and he never doubts it. He's willing to give everything to get the king there. And it is very cool because I see a parallel journey between him, Nov, and Morale, and their idea of finishing a mission and serving someone higher. Oh, there are like another huge character that gets introduced into the series. Maybe I forgot about him. I don't know, like he's the poster of Chimera Ant Arc itself. Yorknew City might hold the best group of anime antagonists in anime, but Chimera Ant Arc holds the best single antagonist in anime. Meruem to me represents a lot of things. First of all, the idea of duality between how he goes from a monster to a human-like character, but in reverse, Gon goes from a human-like character to a monster. There is an actual great video about this, I will link it in the description. I really like this video, you should watch it, it's amazing. But despite Meruem itself is the actual thematic of Chimera Ant Arc. The thematics of the Chimera Ant Arc start with, do we really deserve to be hold such a high category as humans are? But also the thematics change with monsters versus human, which is the idea of the parallel journey that Gon and Meruem go through. Then there is the best character, Komugi. Yes, like you see this character walk into the screen and I'm like to you, would you believe me if I told you this blind girl is actually the best character in Hunter x Hunter, and all crowd goes boo, but she is, like she actually is. That to me represents the idea that humanity's greatest thing is that every human is individual, everyone is different from each other, everyone has something to offer more than each other. So this creates this huge row of things that a simple human that can never do nothing else but play a simple board game can introduce such an important factor to the series that you never expected to. And the final moment of Chimera Ant Arc are some of the greatest, most emotional pieces of literature I ever had the pleasure of watching or reading. Then we have Meruem versus Natural, which is just beautiful. The final duality of the scene, humanity's greatest potential for evolution, or Malice, which represents the idea that no matter what happened, no matter how strong Meruem got, humanity will still got him, because humanity's greatest infinite for potential and evolution is not putting everything we have into one single creature, but the idea is the information we pass daily that allowed us to create the technology and the achievements we have created, because every person is individual, but when we become together we create the legacy of humanity. Despite if it's evil or good, it's still our legacy. Chimera Ant Arc holds a lot of philosophical complexity, and like I said, it deserves its own video when you go in depth. But if I had to talk about any piece of fiction that will come close to the feelings that I got reading the ending of the Chimera Ant Arc, it wouldn't be that much, because there aren't as many. The Chimera Ant Arc represents to me the idea of a show that tackles such complex ideas, not just for the good writing of it, but to make any person feel something. And I wouldn't exchange the first time I watched the Chimera Ant Arc fully with anything, especially episode 131, which is just incredible. One of the best things I ever had the pleasure of watching. The emotional connection that you get there, the absolute incredible to scenes, to everything is just, I cry. Like, I cried more than one time. Every single time I watch that, I get these goosebumps every time, yo. And it is incredible. I nearly forgot to mention how in the thematic of the Chimera Ant Arc to me also represent the idea that the protagonist Gon himself is going through these changes that define his character, like episode 131, which a lot of people consider that to be like the climax of it, but that has been foreshadowed a lot, because Gon's naive perspective on the world and his self-destructive tendencies, selfish nature, at one point have to resolve to this. So I love the idea that Gon is not just a perfect protagonist like all the other shonen protagonists are, but he has every single flaw that a character like him is supposed to have. I remember for the first time in 2015 when I watched Hunter x Hunter, this was my favorite arc. Yes, it might come as a surprise to some of you, but this was my favorite arc. And why it is that? Because to me this arc always resembled a lot of things. First of all, for a 61 episode arc that Chimera Ant Arc was, going to this arc, this was of course shorter, very short compared to that, but also it was very fulfilling compared to that. Because to me it represented a lot of things. The first thing that I absolutely adore Togashi for is making Jing, this figure that we have been following as a enigma from the first episode, not only be introduced like in the first episode of this arc, but also simply be a normal guy. Sometimes you expect him to be this crazy powerful hero that is almost perfect, but no, he's like a lazy character who just is around. He's not a horrible person because he left his son. He's still a person because his idea is that his son will done better, and having him as the figure to follow by, he enjoyed the little detours to the fullest, because there is where he found things that are more important than what he really wanted for. The greatest quote I ever seen, period. Jing is amazing, man, and I am great he was written like that. Then we have the whole Killua conflict, because my favorite part of Hunter x Hunter is that no assholes. Okay, no assholes in this show. Gon transforms into this crazy monster. It isn't like he goes just, hey, you're free now, you have this power and you can do what? No. Gon has to pay for that, and he becomes literally mortified, like near-death experience. And the entirety of the next arc, aka this arc, is to save him. And my favorite part is that we go back to Killua's family and we see everything that it was built up in the second arc. And all of those characters we met are not just faceless characters, we never see them again, but they actually have personalities and we actually feel for them again. And just to see this crazy a world that we have in a way forgotten to because we were so minded up in the realistic nature of the last arc or two, and now to see this idealistic nature of this series and to see just after all this is a fantasy shonen, it is great. Like I said, this arc can be easily cut in two pieces. One is the aftermath of the Chimera Ant Arc, aka the politics of the world, because since Natura is dead we need a new chairman, and we get introduced to the man, the myth, the legend. Here we go. Pariston Hill might be a type of character I would never enjoy in any other series but Hunter x Hunter. He is incredible. I've never expected the final antagonist to be like so little in the series, but he's so important. He's not powerful. All he does is his word. His motives and his characteristics are so enigma-like, and he never is clear to us because he's never introduced like the smartest character that everybody will have a hard time with, but he's introduced as a character that will just be there. Like all this stuff are going on and he's just be there. He doesn't even want to be chairman. Like as long as you don't want to win, you always are a winner. In his case, even times that I felt that Jing was steps ahead of him and he was actually planning something and they were actually gonna defeat him, he just like turns it around. Like it is beautiful, amazing. I don't know how, but just manages to be that amazing. Yes, Pariston is incredible. The vibes I get from him will always be connected to me and I really like him as a character. But my favorite thing about this arc is, oh well, Lucas Zoldyck is an interesting character, extremely powerful, interesting character. To me, this part of the arc is the thematic relevance of the arc itself, which is the idea of most of the characters in the show. Society dehumanizes a character, and we, as the show, slowly humanize that character. That is the idea of Lucas Zoldyck, which is a beautifully written character, if you ask me. And when we compare Aluka to some other characters in other series, just makes sense why everything is like that, because brotherhood is my favorite concept in any show, and seeing Killua and his sister just be close and like that together is just incredible to me. And later on we see Gon and the final scene when Gon meets Jing and how it's portrayed, as well as Pariston showing that he doesn't really want to be chairman, he just cool with vice chairman, and everything that happened in those, like it's like a huge climax, and to me that is the climax of the arc. But everything from that moment and after it, when we go to the mountain and we actually get the little detours quote and everything after that, is just other. It's the ending of the series, not the arc. Nevertheless, this 13th chairman arc is incredible, and to me, third or fourth favorite arc in the series. Yes, you heard that right, third or fourth favorite arc in the series, but mostly third, because I really like this arc. It's incredible. It is the most fulfilling I felt after a long arc in any piece of fiction I ever had to read. After the 10 out of 10 arc, this is the most fulfilling aftermath I ever felt, ever, period. Hunter x Hunter anime has 148 episodes, which adopts the first 339 chapters of the Hunter x Hunter manga by Yoshihiro Togashi. It's usually a one-on-one adaptation of the manga. Besides this, it's one-on-one adaptation of the manga, for the most part, of course. The 2011 anime holds a very strong thematic importance to the series, and to me it is the perfect adaptation in many ways because I really love it. But after that, there are a lot of manga content that hold unadapted. By not adapted, I don't mean that it can't be adapted, but I mean that Yoshihiro Togashi himself hasn't finished the manga because of his back pain. Despite you can see him wearing cool clothes and flexing his swag in conventions, he still is not around, apparently. So another 50 chapters of the manga are not adapted, and there is a lot of more manga content that is expected in the future, because the story is at the point that it just started a new version, a new way of the series, which can be considered as a new arc on its own, and we have a lot of manga content that is actually very good that we need to get adopted. But here is my most controversial Hunter x Hunter opinion I have. Usually I don't have Hunter x Hunter opinions that are controversial, because no matter what a person says about the series, even the most quote-unquote not popular opinions about it, I usually just respect it because I love everything about Hunter Hunter x Hunter, and even if you say Hunter Exam is better than Chimera Ant Arc, I would say that's your opinion. I respect it because I love every single piece of the series that much. I genuinely mean that. But one part of the series but to me, Hunter x Hunter, my Hunter x Hunter, finishes at episode 148. There will be no ending to the series better than episode 148, and everything after episode 148 is still Hunter x Hunter, but until it gets an anime at least once, like in like 100 years later, I won't really take it as the absolute ending of the series. But my favorite moment after the manga is, and a lot of people's favorite moment after the manga is obviously Krolov versus Hisoka. That was an incredible fight, top 5 Hunter x Hunter fight. Some people say it's the best, but you're wrong. It's not the best. This is the best Hunter x Hunter fight. No matter what you say, no matter how much praise it is, it will always should be praised because it is the best Hunter x Hunter, period. The manga is going good, and it's not really a disgrace or anything to what Togashi stands for, because it's great. Like, it's actually great. It introduces some themes and some characters which open up the plot even more, and there are a lot of creative stuff after the anime that I promise that if you never have gotten into it, you would enjoy it, because it's great. It should be great, and it is great. So if you want to continue the manga after the Hunter x Hunter anime, the 2011 one, I recommend you to do so, because you should, like I did. I'm not completely caught up, to be honest, but still, I appreciate Togashi for what he did, and to me, no matter how much hiatuses he takes, like even if he never finishes the story, it's still one of the best stories I ever had the pleasure of experiencing. So I rather get Togashi to have little chapters every single year than write novels. So yeah, or he can just write the story and then slowly start doing it, like finish writing the story to the final point and then just slowly start doing it. And even if he's scared that he might never finish it, someone can draw it for him later, like as long as the story is there and it exists. Like, yeah, that's a great idea, to be honest. So yeah, this was it for this video. It is the greatest video I ever done. Maybe some people like my other videos more, but this is my favorite video I ever done. I know a lot of people will say you could have said more, and the video is an hour long, and there is always more to say about Hunter x Hunter. But this is my way of feeling it. This is how I feel about each individual arc. And sure, some of the stuff I said are more casual, I guess, because I don't feel a lot of stuff about some of the arcs and some of the characters, so of course I will have to just repeat what other people say, because that's how I think about the characters. But characters that really mean something to me personally in a deep level, I of course mention them, how I feel about them, and not about how other people feel about them. So that is another thing. But this is my best video, to me at least, so I would really appreciate if everyone share this to people who like Hunter x Hunter and everything around. Thank you for watching. I really appreciate you wasting all of your time watching my video, and it means a lot. Subscribe, like, follow me on my social medias, all links in the description to references and everything that you need to know. Thank you for watching. Have a nice rest of your day.